as some of you may know, the Operator SDK supports scaffolding Helm operators. So right now, the underlying libraries that the Helm operator uses is all based on Helm 2. So we noticed obviously the announcement of Helm 3 from the Helm guys. This is probably back in May. So they made an initial release of their first alpha. So we've started taking a look to see what exactly that would mean just in general for Helm and also for the Helm operator. So some of the things we noticed off the bat, and we kind of knew about this in advance because some of their docs are up, are that they removed tiller, which has been a big issue for a lot of Helm users because of some of the security ramifications around RBAC and how it handles kind of tiller required kind of this global cluster admin permissions. So they removed that so that I guess basically users of the cluster who had permissions to do the submitting, those permissions would be used rather than tiller's permissions. So that has been a big plus. And then another thing they've done is changed to support namespace scoped release names. So in the past, if you wanted to deploy like a staging namespace and a production namespace and use the same name for your release, that wasn't possible. So that's something that's been fixed in Helm 3. Those two things are already supported by the Helm operator. So the Helm operator, Helm 2 libraries kind of had the flexibility to be able to allow us to make those changes internally to the Helm operator. So those two things are already supported, which is pretty cool. The things that are breaking changes that will cause the Helm operator to need to be upgraded, they have new import paths for their Go library, so that's just a minor change. The big change is there's totally new rewritten libraries around the lifecycle, like the release lifecycle events, so like doing the install, the upgrade, the uninstall. So there'll be a pretty big refactoring there from the Helm operator perspective to support Helm 3's lifecycle events. Probably less related to the Helm operator, but more related to packaging Helm charts. So they've consolidated requirements.yaml into the chart.yaml file. So that's part of like the chart metadata. The requirements.yaml, I think, kind of describes the dependencies of the chart, like what other charts the parent chart depends on, that kind of thing. So that's generally required for packaging a chart. The one impact that might have on the Helm operator is so there's the Operator SDK new -- Helm chart flag. So when we fetch that chart, we also make sure that we fetch all the dependencies. So that'll be a change in how that piece of code needs to work. And then the other change that is not necessarily a breaking change for us, but something that we might need to change on the Helm operator side is that the release name is now required by default, like when you're using the Helm CLI. You can turn that off with a flag that's like -- generate name, but I think the Helm maintainers and the community have basically decided like it makes a lot more sense to let users pick their name rather than have some generated name that really makes no sense in the context of what the release is. So right now, the Helm operator generates a name based on the UUID of the CR that specifies the release. And there's no way to override that right now or configure it from the CR or in the operator source code or anything. So that'll probably be something we're looking at updating in the future to make that more configurable, because I think users will be more likely to want to specify that, because that's what the Helm CLI will start to nudge people towards. There's a couple new features as well in Helm 3 so far. So they've introduced chart values validation using JSON schema. So I think that'll be built into the chart metadata as well. And as you submit values via the CR in the Helm operator, we'll be able to actually validate the values before we actually do the rendering of the release manifest, which will be kind of a nice feature in terms of making sure that what you've submitted in your CR is valid. And potentially we can look at, this isn't something we've gotten to yet, but we could potentially look at including that JSON schema validation as part of an admission validating webhook, which would be pretty cool. So it wouldn't even allow you to create the CR for the release manifest unless that validation passes. And then there's also this new concept of library charts, which also is not necessarily directly related to the Helm operator, but the idea of a library chart is a way to use shared functionality among multiple charts. So library charts don't define release resources, but they can define like shared labels, shared policy in terms of like pod security policies and that kind of thing. So that's a nice thing for enterprises to use to make sure that all of the charts that they deploy in their clusters all have some base level of shared chart templating and policies and that kind of thing.
So just a quick thing on the chart values validation, and we had a bit of a thread going there on the group, the Google group chat about whether validation logic can be generated or into the CRD. And I guess, wouldn't it be possible to take a JSON schema and kind of convert it to an open API validation schema to put in the CRD, so to have kind of that schema validation even outside of before it even hits Helm?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Actually, that's something we could look at for sure.
Okay.
So other plan changes. So this is just the first alpha. So if you've looked at the Helm 3 planning docs, they've been talking about supporting Lua for templating. So I don't think that'll have a major impact on the Helm operator, other than us just making sure that we're using the Helm 3 library so that we can start supporting the additional templating support that is introduced upstream. So that'll be a nice addition for people to be able to use like an actual programming language rather than just Go templates for their resource templating in their charts. They're also planning, at least talking about, using CRDs for the release metadata and version storage. So right now in Helm 2, and then also in their Helm 3 alpha, they're using secrets, just straight up Kubernetes secrets. And they, the way that it works is it basically encodes the entire release into a big like gzipped protobuf, and then stores that directly as like basically a binary base64 piece of data in the release secret. So I don't know exactly how that's going to change for CRDs, but the plan, at least on paper, is to separate the release metadata from the versions, so that there's like a parent CRD that just talks about like, here's a release and here's the chart that it goes with. And then there's going to be like underlying version resources for each version of the release that is generated. So because this hasn't actually been released, or there's no real source code for it yet, we haven't been able to try it out with how this would look in the Helm operator. Right now, the Helm 2 operator is using kind of a customized version of Helm's release storage. So we'd probably take a look at seeing whether we could do a similar thing for if they switch to CRDs for their backend. So luckily we're able to basically just inherit a lot of what the Helm guys are doing for the release storage. So the idea would be to just keep doing that. Let's see. So we had a discussion with some of the Helm guys a week or two ago around some of the things, basically pitching them like, here's what the Helm operator is, here's some of what our ideas are, and one of the ideas that we've been trying to figure out how to solve. We've solved it in the Helm operator, but there's no solution for this in the Helm CLI. So this idea of like fixing a release. So if a release changes, if the release resources for a release change without the actual release being changed, like being through an upgrade, right now Helm doesn't have a way of reconciling those two things and making sure that the underlying resources stay in sync with the deployed release. So in the Helm operator, we basically have implemented our own code that does this. So whenever a release resource changes, we reconcile the CR. We see, we do like a dry run release manifest. If that hasn't changed from the actual deployed release, then everything's good. But then we can go and make sure that we basically reapply all of the release manifest resources to the existing release. So we had a discussion with them. We're talking about creating a plugin that is called like Helm Fix, for example, that could basically implement that same logic as the Helm CLI and then also in Helm's libraries. So the benefit to us there would be that we could basically lift and shift our logic for doing that reconciliation upstream into the Helm source code so that more of the community could benefit from that. And then we'd get the benefit of having...
Sorry that I keep interrupting. This is really important, right? Because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, that there's a big difference between Helm and using the Helm operator in that in Helm, it's kind of a fire and forget, right? You do an install and then you can do an upgrade, but if anything changes behind the curtain, Helm doesn't become aware of it and doesn't do anything about it, right? Whereas the operator, just like you described, will watch all the resources and will then reconcile as needed, right?
Exactly.
So because I keep saying that's a big advantage of having an operator to begin with, that you have this kind of loop, right? This feedback loop that Helm is lacking.
Yeah, exactly. And
this doesn't change that, right?
Nope. So what we're basically pitching is, it seems like more the imperative users of the Helm CLI would probably be pretty interested in this as well, to make sure maybe they could run Helm Fix on some cron job, whatever it is, to make sure that they're basically getting some of the same benefits that the Helm operator provides. So it seems like it's a problem that users of both the Helm operator and the Helm CLI would like to see solved. And the Helm maintainers said the same thing. So the plan is we don't want to impact the Helm 3 release cycle. So the plan is to implement this as a plugin and then experiment and iterate on it, make sure it works well and does what everyone expects. And whenever that gets to a point of maturity that the Helm maintainers are comfortable, then we could introduce that as a built-in subcommand. So yeah, that seems like there was a lot of consensus during our discussion about something that does this sort of thing. So lastly, I kind of probably already mentioned this a little bit, but the big operator impacts are the import paths and basically having to re-implement a lot of the Helm operator reconciler to use the new rewritten Helm libraries. We need to make sure that, so we need to consider, and so A, is it possible, and B, should we maintain backwards compatibility with the previous versions of the Helm operator based on Helm 2? So I think the Helm version 3 is making a pretty good number of backwards compatibility guarantees. So if they are making the same backwards compatibility guarantees, then I think we should be able to as well. But that's something we'll have to kind of look at as Helm 3 progresses. And then also, it's a little bit harder with the Helm operator, because it'd be nice to be able to basically have a user that has existing custom resources for a previous version of the Helm operator to be able to upgrade the operator without having to recreate their existing resources. So there's this migration step that would need to happen potentially. So that's something we'll have to look at when we make the upgrade from Helm 2 to Helm 3 for the Helm operator. Like I said, we need to consider the release name configurability. So because Helm 3 now defaults to requiring a release name, it's something that we expect more users to ask for, since right now the Helm operator doesn't support customizing the release name. And then we're going to so we also have this other kind of orthogonal task to be able to make improvements for Helm operator or hybrid operator developers. So if you're not sure what that concept is, that's basically enabling operator developers that have started out with a Helm operator that want to now do more customizations and move to a Go-based operator that includes a lot of the Helm operator reconcilers and functionality. So right now, if you were to run like Helm migrate, you would see that the main function that gets generated for the new Go operator that uses Helm basically has no way to customize anything. So we've been talking about how can we open that up, make more of a library out of the Helm operator controller, and then giving Go operator, basically these hybrid Go Helm operator developers, the ability to customize more things about their Helm operator. So some examples of that would be So one of the examples that's actually an open issue right now in our GitHub is I want to basically have a mapping between the CR spec and my Helm values. So right now we basically take the CR spec verbatim and put that directly in as the Helm values. So there's a question like, can I have like a mapping function that converts my CR spec to a separate set of Helm values? And kind of the use case there is I've got 3 different charts that I want to create. Basically, I've got a parent chart with like 2 or 3 subcharts, and they all need like one value to be in 4 different. They need like one key, let's say like a username, to be in all 4 charts in different that use different names for that value. If that makes sense. So like the parent chart might have like database.name, and some of the subcharts might have like web app.database.name and that kind of thing. So it's basically a way to make it easy to use just one value that gets propagated through all the different charts in the way that it makes sense for that value. So that's an example of why we would want to improve the Helm hybrid operator experience. There's other things like being able to have like a custom function for setting a release name, having better control of like pre and post install and upgrade chart hooks. So like right now in Helm 2, you can specify like a separate set of templates for pre and post install and upgrade lifecycle events. But there's been users that have said, hey, it'd be really nice if I can run my own custom Go code in the same scenario, which would make the Helm operator a lot more robust in terms of being able to do some of the higher level operator maturity kind of things that the Ansible and Go operators are already capable of. That would be a pretty cool thing to add. The reason I'm talking about all this is because a lot of this will change depending on whether we do it in Helm 2 or Helm 3. So we're likely going to wait until Helm 3 is released before we make a lot of these big breaking changes. So the last little section here, there's just a couple of issues that I opened in the Helm repo about things that I've noticed that aren't quite supported that we currently are able to do well. So one is the custom rendering engine that's supported in Helm 2 is basically not supported right now in Helm 3. And the reason we use that is to be able to inject owner references into all of the resources that are created from like in the chart release manifest. So that's not like a huge deal because we still have this finalizer in the Helm operator to be able to do the uninstall process, which clears things out. But if there's something that goes wrong with that and that fails for some reason and there's a bug somehow in the Helm operator that prevents the failure logic to occur, there's this backup of having, it's nice to have garbage collection enabled for all of these things such that if the parent CR goes away somehow, all the underlying resources can get cleaned up. So there's a discussion going on about whether they'll re-add support for that or not. I think they made this was like a conscious decision that they made. So I think they need to think about reevaluating that decision, and maybe they will, or maybe they won't. So we'll see how that goes. And then right now there's like this weird situation with handling values where like we have to write values out to a file and then load them back in using the Helm CLI. There's like this coupling between the Helm CLI library and then the underlying like Helm SDK libraries that there's an open issue out as well to have them look at a better decoupling between those two things so that we don't have to, basically such that we can take our values directly from the spec and hand them off to Helm. But yeah, I think that's about it. Are there any other comments, questions?
I guess I'm very interested in where you talk about hybrid operators, right? And we can take that offline maybe in the Google group chat, right? Because I've been thinking, well, we have a lot of Helm charts, right? And so we thought, okay, we can start with the Helm operator, but what the Helm charts do not give us is what we call day 2 operations. So we thought, okay, for let's just say backup and restore or something like that. So we were thinking, okay, how can I now add that in? And I was thinking it should be relatively easy to capture that maybe in a separate CRD and then a separate controller, but then add that to the same operator, right? And that would effectively be a hybrid operator with fairly little dependencies between the two controllers, so to speak. One could be Helm based on the Helm operator, and one could be, written in Go from scratch or written in whatever other language, right? Is there anything technically that would make that hard or impossible to do?
No, I don't think so. I think you could really do that right now if you wanted to. If you look at the migrate command, if you run like Helm or Operator SDK migrate in an existing Helm project, it'll convert your project to a Go project, and then you'll get like this main file that right now has like this very bare bones. Basically, it calls like helm.run. If you go and look at that helm.run, that's basically what a main file looks like for a normal Go operator. So what you could do right now, in fact, is take the contents of that helm.run and put it in your own main.go, and then add your own other APIs and controllers and that kind of thing into that main.go. The one caution I would have is right now that's not very exposed, so we will likely be changing that, especially with the Helm 3 stuff. So don't expect there to be a lot of those. Basically, don't expect that thing to be backwards compatible. We're probably going to change a lot of that in the future.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And like I said, I've been mostly thinking, and I have to admit we've never done this, right, of adding new controllers for additional functions and then basically exposing them in separate CRDs, but then having them bundled into one operator.
Yep, that's definitely possible, like already with the Go operator. You can also do that with the Helm operator just by having, multiple charts. But so far, I haven't heard anyone we haven't seen any issues or anything for people who have combined like the Helm operator controller with like their own custom controller. But that's definitely possible. You just have to go to a little bit more effort to get all the code working. The SDK migrate command doesn't make that super easy yet, but it should be possible.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess as soon as we get around to try exploring some of that, we could even bring it back to this call and kind of share what we've learned.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
I do have a question on the existing out-of-the-box Helm operator. Does it support multiple Helm charts?
So yes. So it depends on what you mean, but you can do two things. One, you can have a single operator. You have multiple. If you look at the watches.yaml file that gets created, you can basically add multiple charts, like top-level charts, into the Helm charts directory, and then define multiple watches in the watches.yaml file. So that's if you have like multiple CRDs that you want to define. So that's supported. The other thing that you can do is you can have like one chart that has a bunch of subcharts, and all of that works, out of the box, no problem, in terms of the parent chart templating out the entire release manifest based on all of its subcharts.
So in the first scenario where you have multiple charts and multiple watch, is it possible to also have a single CRD or CR?
No. So in the first scenario, you'd have each chart would have its own CR associated with it. This has come up at least once or twice as an issue in our GitHub, I think, so you could probably search for it, and I can try to search for it too. The suggestion I made was basically if you wanted to do something like that, you could basically have one chart that basically uses all of the other charts that you wanted to use as a parent chart, and then just use one CR via that parent chart. There's some gotchas and caveats with that, but depending on depending on your use case, like that's a way to do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to take a look at different options here, and ideally what we're trying to do is share global values across those charts, and trying to have a single CR that supports that.
Yeah, so I think that's the kind of the use case I was describing for the mapping a CR set of values to like a whole bunch of different chart values. And that's one of the kind of the caveats that I would mention is like, if you have, so the way I would suggest is like, okay, you're going to have one parent chart that has a bunch of subcharts for all of the actual things that you want to deploy under that CR. The problem with that is that if each of those subcharts has a different value key for like a value that you want to define once in your CR, like that's not possible right now. So you have to define it in multiple places for each subchart. And that's not a great user experience, and it's not easy to validate and that kind of thing. So that's definitely one of the use cases for the Helm hybrid operator. And that's not even, like right now, it's not really even supported if you tried to use the Helm reconcilers right now. So that would be a problem. You can't really do that at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right then. I think we're close to wrapping up here. So I just want to be respectful of people's times. I was going to mention one other thing. In the notes you'll see I'm trying to arrange at Helm Summit in Amsterdam to do a Helm operator hands-on workshop, and I was wondering if anyone else on this call was planning on going to Helm Summit or had submitted talks to Helm Summit, so that we could host and have a few more bodies in the room for the hands-on workshop. We always need more attendees and more proctors as well. So anyone's planning on going there?
We have submitted, I mean, within my team, we submitted 3. We haven't heard back yet, but I assume we'll have a couple of people there, and I would definitely want to support having them in this workshop as well.
Okay, great, Andre. So I'll reach out to you. Matt Dorn, who's on the call as well, is usually the person I rope into doing the teaching, and I think Daniel Messier also submitted a talk or 2. So hopefully we can bring more people up to speed and on board with the Helm operator work. So thanks, Joe, for the update. And I'm looking to see our next meeting will be the 3rd Tuesday in July. So if you have a topic that you want to talk about, or that we should be talking about that we didn't, or an operator, hopefully what would be wonderful is if we had an operator, will be the 16th of July. So if you have something that you'd like to talk about, just let me know or Rob know, and we'll add you to the schedule.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us at our new time. We're going to try to get a Google invite sent out to the entire group. We ran into some issues, and I saw Google Calendar was down this morning, so it wouldn't have helped. But hopefully this time works out for everybody, and we'll get some more participation from folks where this typically would have been their Friday evening. Now will be in the middle of their week at least.
And there is one last question, and I will stay on if someone can answer Mansur's question. He's asking, currently we have to put our charts into Helm Operator. Is it possible to enable for Helm Operator to download it from Report Helm repo? And Joe was saying, yes, you can do that. So Mansur, if you, in the gist, put in your full name, because I don't have it, and maybe an email contact, we can hook you up, and Joe and you can correspond either there or on the Google group and ask that question and get that out in the public. All right, check out the Helm user guide in our GitHub. All right, thank you everybody for joining. I'm gonna post the full recording to the playlist and YouTube, and I will snip up the different updates into little short ones for other people to read too. So look for that in our YouTube, and that's the end of our hour. Take care, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Cheers, guys. Bye.